So this idea of turning €5 a day into €1,000,000? Pretty wild, right?
Mhm.
When you send over that YouTube video, that Come Diventare Milionario con €5 by Luca Valori, I have to admit I was hooked. Can we really just, like, pocket change our way to being millionaires? Let's dive in and find out. Valori, he starts by, painting this picture of what the economy in Italy is like, and honestly, it's kind of all over the place. He talks about how baby boomers, they had this, like, incredible time of growth, right? Like over 60%. Buying houses, starting businesses.
Mm.
They were living the Italian dream.
Yeah, and that level of growth, it's almost mythical for anyone who didn't live through it. We've got all this tech now, all this advancement, but for a lot of people, especially younger Italians, it's tough just to get by.
It's true. He even talks about people working multiple jobs just to, like, stay afloat, living paycheck to paycheck. I thought that example of the used Fiat Panda, that really stuck with me. Like a pretty basic car costing around €10,000. It makes you think about, the folks who are barely getting by, and then, well, you see people sporting designer everything.
Right. That contrast, that's really what Valori's getting at. How is it that things can be this tight, but some people, they seem to just, I don't know, effortlessly hold on to their money, build their wealth, while others are stuck in this cycle? It's a question a lot of us are asking.
And then Valori, he just throws this curveball, right?
Yeah.
He says that saving money, like that classic advice everyone's parents tell them, it's actually a terrible way to build wealth.
Yeah. He doesn't pull any punches, does he?
Especially, he says, for younger generations. He even called it, like, a path to poverty. And at that point, I'm like, all right, I got to hear this.
It definitely goes against everything we've always been told. But to get why he says this, we have to talk about two things: inflation and opportunity cost.
Okay, so inflation first. I think most people kind of get that prices go up over time, but
Right, but it's more than just like your coffee costing a few cents more. Remember that 10,000 Fiat Panda in, say, 10, 20 years? It might actually cost way more, even if it's older.
oh, well, yeah.
Because your money, it just doesn't buy as much as it used to. That's inflation eating away at it.
So even if you're saving every month, putting money aside, it's like you're not really moving forward.
It's like running up a hill that never ends. You're putting in the work,
You
but
never get to the top.
exactly. And that's where this opportunity cost comes in. See, when your money is just sitting there, especially if it's earning hardly any interest, it's not just losing value because of inflation.
Missing out on actually growing.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Imagine you have a skill, something you're really good at,
Okay?
but instead of using it, you just, I don't know, let it sit there. That's kind of what keeping your money in a low interest account is like. It's a missed opportunity.
I'm starting to see why Valori is not into the whole hiding money into the mattress thing. But if saving's not the answer, then what is?
He's all about changing your mindset. It's not about saving, it's about investing.
Even if you can only invest small amounts.
Especially if you start small. It's about making your money work for you, even while you sleep.
Okay, so that brings us back to that big question. Can you actually take €5 a day and turn it into $1,000,000? Is Valori, like, for real?
It sounds crazy, right? But let's break down how he gets there. So €5 a day, that's about €150 a month,
Right.
which comes out to 1,825 a year. And if you do that consistently for, say, 42 years,
Okay, so thinking like age 25 to retirement at 67.
you'd have around, let me see, about 76,657.
That's not bad, especially if you think of it as spare change, basically.
Right. But then, like we said before, inflation comes knocking. That's 76,650 in 40 years. It's not going to buy what it can today.
So how do you, like, outrun inflation?
That's where the beauty of compound interest comes in, which is a core part of what Valori's talking about. He's saying aim for a 10% return on your investments every year.
10%. I mean, that sounds great, but is that even possible? Most savings accounts are, like, barely above zero these days.
I know, right? And we'll definitely unpack how realistic that 10% goal is. But before we do that, maybe it'd be good to just like explain what compound interest actually means. Some people might not be familiar with it.
Yeah, good idea.
So imagine a snowball, right? It starts small, but as it rolls down the hill, it picks up more and more snow.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
That snowball getting bigger, that's kind of like compound interest. You're not just earning money on your original investment, but also on the interest you made the year before and the year before that.
So it keeps building on itself.
Exactly. Like a snowball, it can turn into something much bigger over time, even if you start small. And in this case, the snowball is that steady €5 a day, and the hill it's rolling down, that's the stock market or wherever you're investing. And Valori's claiming that with this 10% annual return, your little 5 snowball could turn into, get this, over €1 million in those 42 years.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty impressive snowball. But let's be real. A consistent 10% return every year. That's a big if. I can almost hear our listeners saying, "Where do I sign up? This sounds too good to be true."
You're right to be a little skeptical. No investment is ever guaranteed. But Valori's not pulling this 10% out of thin air. He's basing it on how the S&P 500 has performed in the past.
The S&P 500, that's like Wall Street stuff, right?
Yeah, kind of. It's basically a collection of 500 of the biggest companies in the U.S. stock market. It's often used as a measure of how well the U.S. economy is doing overall.
Okay, so it's like a benchmark.
Exactly. And get this. Valori points out that if you'd put money in the S&P 500 back in, let's say, May of '82, and just left it there until May of this year, 2024, you would have made an average return of, get this, 9.48% every year.
Wow, that's almost spot on his 10% goal.
Right. But, and this is a big but, just because it happened in the past doesn't mean it'll happen again in the future.
So like, just because something did well before doesn't mean it always will. It's kind of like...
Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Right?
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. So does that mean investing is just a gamble? Should we all just stick to our piggy banks?
Not exactly. Haha. But it does mean you got to be smart about it. It's not about getting lucky. It's about having a strategy. And one of the most important things is diversification.
Diversification. That's like not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to put all your money into one company or even one part of the economy. Because if that one thing goes south,
You lose everything.
you got it.
Yeah.
But if you spread your investments out, different companies, different industries, even different countries, then...
It's like a safety net, kind of.
Exactly. Some investments might go up, some might go down, but overall, you're more likely to be okay. You're prepared for whatever happens.
That makes sense. But I know some of our listeners are probably thinking, okay, this is all great, but €5 a day, I can barely afford rent.
And that's a real concern, for sure. But Valori talks about that too. He's a big believer in finding ways to earn more, especially online.
Yeah, he talks a lot about that whole online business world, like e-commerce, digital marketing, things like that.
It's true, there are a lot of opportunities out there these days. But even if you're earning more, it's important to know how to manage that money well. He's a big advocate for financial literacy.
Yeah, knowing how money works, right? Like budgeting, investing, all that stuff.
Exactly. He even mentions this thing called the 50-30-20 rule as a place to start.
50, 30, 20. Remind me what that is again.
So you take your income and you aim to spend 50% on your needs, like rent, food, bills. Then 30% on stuff you want, like hobbies, going out, that kind of thing.
And the other 20% goes to savings and investments.
Bingo. Or paying off any debts you might have.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Not just about earning more. It's about like being smart with what you have.
Exactly. It's about making your money work for you.
Well, I feel like we've covered a lot today. From the Italian economy to compound interest to even starting an online business.
It's been a wild ride.
It has.
Ah.
So what do you think is the biggest takeaway from all this?
I think Valori's main message is about taking control, Even if you start small, like with just €5, it's about building good habits and making choices that will help you in the long run. And that's true for more than just money. It's about life too, right?
It's about thinking about the future you want and then actually doing something about it step by step. I like that. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of building wealth. And remember, even small changes can make a big difference over time. See you next time.